Listen, it's 2 a.m. when your world collapses, and mine did with a single text message. Not from my husband, from his boss. He's with me. Don't wait up. Just like that. No explanation, no courtesy, just raw power flexing at the worst possible hour. You know what I did? I stared at that message for exactly 30 seconds. Then I typed back, "Keep him. I won't." And then, because rage makes you crystal clear sometimes, I added, "Come over, both of you. Let's talk now." The audacity hit me like ice water. This woman thought she could text me orders about my own husband at 2 a.m., and I just... What? Cry? Beg? Disappear? 20 minutes later, they're on my doorstep. Her, smug, shoulders back like she owned the world. Him, rattled, eyes darting, realizing maybe this wasn't the power move he thought it was. But what I showed her that night, what I laid out on my coffee table, it didn't just end her little power trip. It ended her entire legacy. If you've ever had your boundaries tested at 2 a.m., hit subscribe right now. Drop your location in the comments. I want to know where my people are watching from. Because this story, it's for everyone who's ever been underestimated in their darkest hour. You want to know where I'm telling you this from? My balcony. It's drizzling, that soft Seattle drizzle that makes everything look like a watercolor painting. The city's finally quiet, just the hum of late-night traffic and my kettle whistling inside. I've got my tea set up here, chamomile, honey, the works. There's this cracked ring dish on the table where I used to put my wedding ring. Doesn't hold rings anymore. Now it's got paper clips and hair ties and little reminders I write to myself. Right next to it, there's this plant I rescued from my old office. Nearly died, but look at it now. Green, reaching toward the light, stronger than before. And there's this photo in a cheap frame. My first paycheck stub. Not from some glamorous job. Just a reminder of when I was 22 and thought hard work and good intentions were enough. God, I was naive. Inside, on my desk, there's a binder. Neat tabs, color-coded. The label reads, Policy, Access, Consent. Next to it, my phone with about 47 voice notes I recorded to myself during the worst of it. Evidence, proof, receipts. Because here's what they don't tell you about workplace betrayal. It doesn't happen in some dramatic conference room showdown. It happens in a hotel lounge at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. She called it a wellness check-in. Said she was concerned about my performance, wanted to grab coffee somewhere neutral. I should have known. The Marriott downtown. That generic business lounge with the fake plants and overpriced lattes. I walked in thinking we'd discuss workload, maybe clear the air about some tension I'd been sensing. Instead, she's got her tablet ready, this predatory smile, and a manila envelope that made my stomach drop. "We're conducting a compliance review," she announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. My access was already gone. She showed me the screen, my badge photo with a red suspended stamp across it. The NDA was pre-printed, already notarized. She had this whole thing planned. But the worst part? They walked me out through the service corridor, like I was some kind of criminal. Past the kitchen staff, past the maintenance guys, past everyone who definitely didn't need to witness my humiliation, but got a front row seat anyway. My car key fob failed at the parking garage exit. Of course it did. They'd probably deactivated everything. So I walked. 3 miles in that same drizzle, in my good interview shoes, dignity intact but ankles screaming. That's when the rage crystallized into something else, something useful. Dawn came, and with it, clarity. I made lists, color-coded, cross-referenced, time-stamped lists. I turned my apartment into a war room, but quiet, methodical. The kind of investigation that would make an FBI profiler proud. The rain kept tapping against my windows while I worked. 3 monitors, 16 browser tabs, and a growing pile of evidence that would have made Watergate investigators jealous. First, I called Marcus, this cybersecurity friend from my coding bootcamp days. Freelancer, ethical hacker, the kind of guy who can find digital fingerprints in places you didn't know existed. "I need device forensics," I told him, "and I need it yesterday." Then Sarah from the HR Ethics Collective, this underground network of HR professionals who've seen everything and aren't afraid to speak up about it. Anonymous hotlines, whistleblower protocols, the whole 9 yards. She connected me with people who'd been through similar situations. Next was Rebecca, this labor attorney who specializes in retaliation cases. Takes them on contingency. No billable hours unless we win. She listened to my story and said 6 words that changed everything. This is a pattern, not isolated. And finally, Diego, investigative podcaster with 200K subscribers and a track record of holding corporations accountable. Public pressure, he explained, works faster than any court system. The artifacts started piling up. Badge logs showing my access being monitored for weeks before the ambush. MFA token clone logs proving someone was accessing my accounts remotely. IP addresses from remote desktop sessions that traced back to her home network. But the real smoking gun? Marcus pulled a Slack export from their IT department. Messages between her and my husband, coaching him on how to document performance concerns 2 weeks before my termination. Time-stamped, screenshot ready, absolutely damning. Rebecca helped me map the policy violations. Fraternization with a direct report, retaliation timeline, conflict of interest documentation. It was like watching a masterclass in how not to manage people. And then Diego showed me the staff pulse survey results. Heat map of fear zones that corresponded exactly to when she'd taken over the department. People were terrified, jumping ship, documenting everything because they knew they might be next. I had them. Not just her, but the whole system that enabled this. So what did I do? I invited them over for tea. Chamomile tea and lemon bars. That's what I offered them when they showed up at my door that night. Not wine, not whiskey, not some dramatic confrontation setup. Just soft hospitality that immediately put them off balance. I wore neutral colors, soft gray sweater, no makeup, barefoot. The kind of calm that makes people nervous because they can't read your intentions. My voice was steady, almost serene. "Come in," I said. "Let's speak woman to woman. No lawyers, no HR protocols. Just clarity." She strutted in like she owned the place, scanning my apartment for signs of breakdown. Tissues, empty wine bottles, evidence of the crying mess she expected me to be. Instead, she found herbal tea setups and fresh flowers. My husband hung back, realizing maybe he'd miscalculated somewhere along the way. I poured tea, cut neat squares of lemon bars, made small talk about the weather. Let them settle in, let them feel safe, because what I was about to show them required their full, unguarded attention. "I've been thinking about our conversation," I said, walking to my dining room wall where I'd hung a timeline, color-coded flags, string connections, the whole conspiracy board aesthetic. About timing. Red flags for her late-night access to my files, blue for the coached conversations with my husband, green for policy violations, yellow for the retaliation timeline. She stopped mid-sip. Her smug expression started shifting. "This is interesting," I continued, pulling out my phone. "Marcus helped me recover some audio from that Slack integration you probably forgot about." I pressed play. Her voice crystal clear. "You need to start documenting her attitude problems now. Make it look organic, but we need paper trail by Friday." My husband's voice, "Are you sure about this?" Her response, "Trust me. I've done this before." The color drained from her face, but I wasn't done. Subscribe right now if you've ever had that moment when the tables completely turned. Comment your location. I want to know where my vindication squad is watching from. "This is fun," I said, pulling out my laptop. Marcus also found something interesting in the access logs. Screen recording time. Her user credentials accessing my files remotely at 1:57 a.m. on the night before my termination. Building her case while I slept, thinking she was untouchable. "And this," I continued, unfolding Rebecca's policy analysis, HR violation matrix, romance between supervisor and direct report, policy section 4.2, retaliation against protected activity, federal statute, conflict of interest documentation, board governance requirement. I laid out each violation like playing cards, matching them to timestamps, creating an undeniable pattern. The beautiful thing about modern workplaces, I explained, my voice still perfectly calm, is how well documented everything is. Digital trails, policy frameworks, compliance requirements. It's almost like they designed the system to catch people like you. She tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. See, I did something else this week. I filed complaints with external ethics reviewers. I've prepared a board escalation package, and I've documented everything for regulatory filing if needed. Personal liability assessments included. The smugness was completely gone now. She looked like she was calculating lawsuit costs in her head. But here's the thing. I don't want to destroy anyone. I just want accountability. Clean exits for everyone, policy changes so this doesn't happen to the next person, and maybe some professional development on appropriate workplace relationships. My husband finally spoke up. What are you saying? I'm saying, I replied, that this ends one of two ways. Quietly, with acknowledgement and changes, or publicly, with lawyers and headlines. Your choice. Diego's podcast dropped at 6 a.m. the next morning. Power, Betrayal, and Digital Evidence, a modern workplace horror story. Every fact checked, every source corroborated, every legal boundary respected. By 8 a.m., my former company was in full crisis mode. Emergency all-hands meeting at 10. Interim HR announced an independent investigator and whistleblower amnesty program. People who'd been documenting their own experiences suddenly felt safe coming forward. Board statement by noon. Pending investigation findings, boss name, has been placed on administrative leave. We are implementing immediate policy overhauls regarding retaliation and relationship disclosure. LinkedIn lit up. Industry newsletters picked it up. Morning show producers started calling Diego about workplace accountability stories. It wasn't explosive. It was systematic, professional. The kind of accountability that actually changes things instead of just making headlines. But you want to know what really taught me about boundaries? A conversation with my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, in my kitchen 3 days later. She's this pragmatic woman, retired HR director, seen everything twice. She was helping me make dumplings, something to do with my hands while I processed everything. You know, she said, folding dough with practiced precision. I left a perfect partner once. Everyone thought I was crazy. Good job, nice apartment, social status. But he had this way of making decisions about my life without asking me. She paused, meeting my eyes. Leaving him saved my career. Peace beats pyrotechnics every time. What do you mean? I asked. Winning isn't the big dramatic moment. It's the quiet control you maintain when everything's falling apart. It's clean exits and clear boundaries. It's knowing when to walk away and when to stay and fight. That hit different than any revenge fantasy ever could. Subscribe if you've learned that real power is quiet. Comment your location if you know that peace beats pyrotechnics. The voicemails started that same week. First from her, smug, turned defensive, turned apologetic within 48 hours. We should talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we can work something out. Then from my husband. Blame shifting to bargaining to this weird protective stance. I was trying to shield you from office politics. You don't understand how companies work. We can fix this if you just... I saved every single one. Not for evidence, I had enough of that. For the record, for the reminder of how quickly power dynamics shift when people realize you're not the victim they thought you were. His final text was perfect in its delusion. We can fix this. I wrote myself a memo. I'm not your repair crew. Because here's what I'd learned. Other people's poor choices are not my renovation project. Drop your location in the comments if you've ever had to remind someone that you're not their cleanup crew. Subscribe if you know the liberation of refusing to fix what you didn't break. 2 job offers came within the month. A nonprofit wanted me to head their ethical operations task force. A mid-market consultancy offered to spin up a culture rehabilitation practice. I turned them both down and started something new. Boundaries Systems Lab, BSL, ethics design, access controls, retaliation-proof organizational structures. The consultancy I wished had existed when I needed it. Seed funding came from an unexpected source, a former board observer from my old company who'd been watching the investigation unfold. You built something remarkable from nothing, she said. Now build it for other people. First office was a corner of a sunlit co-working space. Corkboard covered in value statements and policy templates, a lending library of workplace rights resources. Everything I'd needed and couldn't find when my world imploded. We developed systems. Red flag retrospectives every Friday, teams analyzing their own warning signs before they became crises. Open metrics on reporting channels and outcomes. Quarterly panic tests to make sure people could actually access help when they needed it. Hiring rule number 1. No brilliant jerks, no exceptions. Every manager got trained in power dynamics and consent in professional relationships. If you couldn't handle both competence and kindness, we weren't your company. Comment your location if you've ever built something from the ashes of your worst professional experience. Subscribe if you believe that the best revenge is building better systems. The internal investigation concluded exactly as I'd predicted. Retaliation confirmed, policy violations documented, pattern of behavior established across multiple employees. She resigned, lost her industry certifications, professional censure that made her basically unhireable in our sector. No rehire clause at any subsidiary or partner company. My husband signed separation agreements that included equity forfeiture and mandatory ethics training for any future management roles. We handled asset division through lawyers, not drama. The regulatory settlement required an independent monitor for 2 years, complete policy rewrites, and a staff restitution fund for anyone who'd experienced retaliation. It wasn't spectacular, it was thorough, and it worked. Within 6 months, BSL had our first major win. Healthcare client reduced misconduct complaints by 63% after implementing our consent and power protocols. Fintech company deployed our boundary architecture and saw employee satisfaction scores jump 40%. Industry conferences started calling. The boundary architect, they dubbed me. Governance summits, workplace culture panels, the whole speaking circuit. I declined every single trauma porn profile request. This wasn't about my personal drama. It was about building systems that kept other people safe. Subscribe if you've ever turned your worst experience into other people's protection. Drop your location if you know that real change happens in policy documents, not headlines. Last month, I saw him at the farmer's market, rain-specked hoodie carrying a box of unsold startup merch. Apparently, his new venture wasn't taking off quite as planned. He looked smaller somehow, not broken, just reduced. We made eye contact across the produce stands. A nod. That's it. He walked over, surprisingly direct. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "The boundary policy document you released publicly. My new team implemented it. Actually helps." No spark, no speech, no dramatic closure monologue. Just 2 people who used to know each other, acknowledging that sometimes the best outcome is just better systems. "Good luck," I said, and meant it. He nodded and walked away. I bought Basil and went home. Comment your location if you've ever had closure that looked nothing like the movies. Subscribe if you know that real endings are usually just quiet Tuesday afternoons. I'm looking at my desk right now, corkboard full of notes. Peace, proof. Systems, secrets. People, personalities. Sunrise coming through the blinds. Phone on do not disturb because boundaries aren't just professional, they're personal. Today's calendar has exactly 2 items. Call Aunt Margaret and buy basil for tonight's pasta. This is what winning actually looks like. Not courtroom drama or explosive confrontations. Just the quiet satisfaction of building something better from the wreckage of what came before. Dignity over drama. Receipts over rage. Structures that keep people safe instead of stories that just make people angry. That's the mission. That's the work. Before you go, tell me in the comments which reveal hit hardest for you. Was it the timeline wall, the audio evidence, the access logs, and share a boundary you've enforced that changed your life?